So with the new Spider-Man No Way Home set out, we now have all 3 Spider-Man in LEGO. So with these new figures, I thought this would be a perfect time to make all 8 Spider-Man movies in LEGO. So let's start with the first Spider-Man movie. Now for this movie, I really wanted to do the final battle, which takes place in an abandoned building, so I'd be able to make stuff like really messy looking and broken down. So to start off, I made a base with a black border, which I always do on most of my builds. And then I started with like a messy like concrete floor, which is all broken up and stuff. And then I made some like broken old like wooden pillars. And then the movie, they're on like a broken flooring, like a wooden flooring. So I had to figure out how I wanted the flooring to look. But I had to make sure that the flooring was all broken and messed up and it looked old and abandoned. So I came up with this wooden frame, which is gonna get a bunch of like broken boards and stuff on it, but right now I just have the frame. And now on the ground I wanted to have like a bunch of vegetation. So I got these like tree pieces and a bunch of leaves and I just put them all over the floor and I connected it, and for what I was going for, I think it turned out pretty good. Now I also wanted to have the broken wall with the glider behind it. So I built up this broken wall, and then for the glider I just used the one from the new set. And I put it on some clear pieces and I have it floating. Now on the other side of the build, I built up the broken brick wall, which is the one that Goblin gets impaled to. And then I also finished off the flooring, which is just a bunch of like smooth tiles sticking out and it's supposed to be all broken. It looks a lot different in the movie, honestly, on the flooring, but I just didn't have enough smooth pieces to do it. And I also added this really small pile of bricks, which is the one that Spider-Man lands on after he does the backflip whenever the glider starts coming towards him. But now it's time to add the figures. So I added the brand new Tobey figure, and then I also added the new Goblin, and I kind of wanted to add the old one so that it could have the mask, but I was not going to pay for that. It is way too expensive. So this is the complete final battle for the original Spider-Man movie, and I think it turned out pretty good. So now let's destroy it and go into Spider-Man 2. Now for Spider-Man 2, I'm also going to build the final battle. So I'm going to build Doc Ock's machine, but the base I made pretty small because I want to have it like water, and then it's going to be the machine higher up above the water, which is going to be bigger than the base. So I started off by making the water with the like slope pieces and a bunch of smooth tiles. Then I started working on the base of the machine, which is just kind of like a circle, and then it's going to have the 4 like arch thingies and then the tritium in the middle. So after I finished the base, I had to figure out how I wanted to get the archways to go because I couldn't get them how I wanted it to be. So I worked on it for a while, and then I finally got the actual shape that I wanted. Originally I was going to use the like ballpoint pin things, and I didn't like it because they weren't staying straight. So I ended up using these pieces, I don't really know what you call them, and I made like a 3-section arch. So I used these 1x2 pieces, I don't really know what you call them. And then for the lights I used 1x1 orange studs, which I had to get tons of them to make all 4. And it turned out like this, and I kind of think it looks pretty accurate. So I put all 4 of them on the machine, and I thought it turned out pretty good. And then I made the pillars on the machine, which are alright, they're just bricks. I just put the bricks for them. Then for the actual tritium in the middle, I wanted to use power pieces. So I just put them on all 5 sides of the brick, and then on the bottom I just put some clear pieces to make it look like it was floating. And then I put the tritium on the actual machine, and now it's time to put the figures on the build. So I obviously used the same Spider-Man, and he's just jumping off of the top, shooting a web at Doc Ock. And then for Doc Ock, I used the same one from the new set, and he's also going for Spider-Man, but that's the build for Spider-Man 2. So now it's time to destroy it and go into Spider-Man 3. Now in this movie, the final battle takes place in a construction site. So I started off with the exact same size base as the previous build, and then I just put a bunch of tan pieces to represent sand. And there's a ton of studs showing because I want to have a bunch of sand piles. So next I built up 4 pillars for the second floor, and then I put all the piles of sand, and I put Sandman in the middle. So that's the first floor done. Now it's on to the second one. So for this floor, it's going to have Spider-Man and Venom fighting. So I tiled off the base with the plan to have all the poles in the ground where Venom is in the middle. So I pretty much just put all the poles down, I put Venom in the middle, and then I put Spider-Man hitting the poles, and I built up the 4 pillars for the last floor, and then Spider-Man's mask is on the ground, and that completes that floor. And then I just tiled off another base and I stuck it on top to make it the actual like roof of the building. So that's the final build for Spider-Man 3, and that is the end of Tobey's movies. So now it's time to go into the Amazing Spider-Man. Now for this movie, I'm not going to spend super long on the build, because not only have they not made a lizard figure, but they also haven't even made the suit for the actual Spider-Man in this movie. And I don't like most of the custom figures out there for the lizard, and I also didn't want to go out and try and buy all the parts to make some mediocre figure. So I just saw what I had, and I had a scorpion. So I just took off the little pointy piece that's on the end of his tail, and that's my lizard. It's not perfect, but they've never made an actual lizard figure. I hope that they do one day. And then I also didn't want to use the suit from the new No Way Home set. I actually wanted to try and make one based on the movie, and I wanted to keep the dark color scheme that it had, so I didn't want to use like a bright Spider-Man figure. And to be honest, the only Spider-Man minifigure that has like dark coloring that I thought would have been good was the original Tom Holland figure from Homecoming, because I think if you look at it side by side, it doesn't look terrible. And I've already decided that for Spider-Man Homecoming, I'm just going to use the figure from the Sanctum Sanctorum, so that'll make it where I'm not using the exact same figure for both movies. And so for this build, instead of doing the final battle, I'm just going to do the school fight scene. So So I started off with this base, and then I tiled it off and I planned out where everything was gonna go. And then I built up these 210 walls, which are pretty plain, but that's because I'm gonna have a bunch of lockers in front of them. And then on one side there's a door and the other side is just plain. And then I made this locker along with 11 more. And then I put them in the build and I thought it looked pretty good. And then on the side that has the door, I also added a clock on the roof. And then I tiled off the top of the build. And then now for the figures, I just have Spider-Man and Lizard fighting in the hallway. And honestly, for not having the right figures and it being a pretty simple build, I think it turned out pretty good. But now it's time to go into The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now whether you like this movie or not, I still love the final battle. Spider-Man vs. Electro I think is a very enjoyable final battle. And so that's the one I'm going to build for this movie. So I started off with a pretty small base. And then obviously I tiled it off and got everything planned out. And in the movie there are these like weird pillars. And it's really hard to make it in Lego because I didn't have a lot of pieces. So I was only able to make 5 pillars and they're varying in sizes. But I made 5 of those. And then I made some pipes. And I put all of those on the build. And for this one I actually went out and bought the original Electro. And they actually made the suit for the Spider-Man in this movie. So for this one I was actually able to do both characters with their actual accurate suits based on the movie. So I put them on the build and they're fighting each other. And the pillars are kind of accurate. They aren't really exactly what I wanted, but I don't really know any other ways to design it, and that was really the best option that I had. Out of all like the circle pieces that I had, that was the best way to build it, to have like the lines and stuff that it has in the movie. I mean, I don't hate it just could have been a little bit better. But now that's the end of Andrew's movies, and now it's time to go on to Spider-Man Homecoming. Now for this movie I'm also going to do the final battle. So I started off with this base and then I put a bunch of tan plates to make it like sand, because in the movie it takes place on a beach, and then I elevated the sand in one of the corners. And this final battle they're on a plane and the plane crashes, so I put like a broken wing and a bunch of like broken metal pieces around, and then I put a bunch of fire. And then in the movie Vulture tries to pick up one of the boxes, so I put one broken box and then another box on the floor that isn't broken. And then for the figures I used the new Tom Holland figure from the Sanctum Sanctorum, and then for the Vulture figure I used the one from the original Homecoming set. But the wings from that set I think are kind of heavy for what I'm trying to do, so I took the wings from the No Way Home set that was inspired by Homecoming, and I just stuck that with the original figure. And then I put him on a clear rod and he's in the corner, and then Spider-Man's on the other side of the build shooting a web at him. So now that the Spider-Man Homecoming build is done, it is time to go into Spider-Man Far From Home. Now for this movie I did not want to do the final battle. I tried to build the hallway fight scene, but the windows are really weird in the movie and it did not translate well into Lego. So I decided that instead I was going to build the Hydro Man fight. So I started off with this base, and then I used a bunch of smooth pieces and slope pieces, and I made some water. And then I built up a bunch of posts which Spider-Man jumps on in the movie. And then the other side of the build I just put the Hydro Man build from the Lego set on it. And then for the figures I used the Mysterio and the Spider-Man from that 4+ set, which are more accurate to the movie. Now in this scene technically Spider-Man wasn't wearing his suit. I don't even think he had it yet, but that's just the suit that I think of whenever I think of Far From Home. And then for Hydro Man I obviously just used the one from the original set. And then I had Spider-Man shooting a web, I had Mysterio flying shooting his power stuff at Hydro Man, and then Hydro Man was shooting like water power pieces at them. And now that was my build for Spider-Man Far From Home. I think it turned out alright, but now after building something for every single Spider-Man movie, it was time to make the final movie in Lego, Spider-Man No Way Home. Now I think the set for Spider-Man No Way Home is really good, and I know I'm probably not going to be able to actually top it, because not only do I not have very many pieces in that copper color, but I don't know how I'm going to come up with a new design for the Statue of Liberty. So I decided that for this build, instead of doing the Statue of Liberty, I was just going to do a bunch of scaffolding, because that's really all they're fighting on the whole movie. I wanted to do the big Captain America shield, but I did not have enough pieces in that color to make the shield. So to start off, I created a base, I smoothed it off and got everything ready, and then I started building and placing all the scaffolding, and then I built like a big clump of sand for Sandman, and then it was time to add all the figures. Now I know this one doesn't have as much detail as the other ones, but after that set came out, if I'm not building the Statue of Liberty, it's not going to be that detailed, because the Statue of Liberty is what makes it so detailed, because if not, then the whole set would have just been a bunch of scaffolding. So I just made sure that I didn't make the base too big so that the build could be mainly just scaffolding and the little Sandman build, so that the figures would be the main detail, which there's a lot. So to start off, I have Sandman on the bottom with his hammer. He's also shooting up sand at Andrew Spider-Man, and then the new Electro is also shooting electricity at Andrew Spider-Man. And then at the top I have Tobey Spider-Man and Green Goblin rematching, and then at the bottom I have Tom in his new suit and he's about to be grabbed by Doc Ock, and Lizard's also trying to attack him. And I think overall this one's alright. I do think it's one of the worst ones because it's so simple, but I only didn't try so hard on it because we just got a new set, which I think is far better than just about anything I could build. But anyways, that was Spider-Man No Way Home. So now after that I have built all 8 Spider-Man movies in Lego.